Hello, everybody, and welcome back, as always, to Almost Game Day. As always, I'm your host, Sean Green. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've got a bunch of topics in the NFL we just need to discuss. Free agency right on the horizon. We'll get to that as well. But first, the moment a lot of NFL fans, and especially Cowboy fans, have all been waiting for. Dak Prescott finally gets paid. I think 4 years, $160 million deal. We're also going to look, I think he's getting franchise tagged this year, but Cowboys fans do not care. Cowboys fans are excited. Cowboys fans are happy. And listen, let's look at the broad stroke of this, right? The Cowboys needed to do this deal. You put him on a franchise tag, it creates too many problems. Jerry Jones clearly knows something. We don't know if there's a TV deal on the horizon that's going to help the cap. We don't know. Because this deal is bigger than the deal that Dak was asking last year. There was many people last year wondering, this is a really cheap deal for a quarterback. Why wouldn't Jerry Jones do it? Well, now we're confused even more because it's a much bigger deal than what was initially thought of last year. So, we're looking at Dak. And if I'm looking at other options for the Cowboys, Andy Dalton, yeah, okay. Dak Prescott is the best quarterback option for the Cowboys. And I think he'd be the best quarterback option for most teams in the league. I'm sure the Patriots would love a guy like Dak Prescott right now. But guess what? They can't have him. There's so many uncertainties with quarterbacks nowadays, especially now. You go into the draft. It's a hit or miss. Josh Rosen, I bet the Cardinals would have wished that Josh Rosen did good. But now Josh Rosen's pretty much a practice squad quarterback. The draft is a hit or miss. The Cowboys hit on this one. Dak Prescott is the quarterback of the future for the Cowboys. Now, there's a lot of questions to be answered, right? Can he, is he good with the ankle? How is the ankle doing after that horrific injury last season? There's questions. Can he still perform at that level? And that's why I'm bringing on, again, for the third week in a row, Alex Funderburke, Cowboys fan. So it's really interesting to hear his take. Alex, just give me your first initial thoughts. Your team has locked up Dak Prescott for many more years to come. How excited are you and how pumped?
Man, I was so happy. I mean, last week before we went on, we were talking in the studio and I was saying, look, I don't think we're going to re-sign Dak, so go trade 4 or 5 first-round picks to go get Russell Wilson. That's where I was. I wanted Dak back, but I did not think Jerry would do it. So the fact that Jerry did it, I'm thrilled. I mean, I love Dak. Dak's easily my favorite player on the Cowboys. If you told me I was going to be on the show today, I would have worn my Dak jersey. But, these things happen last minute. But here I am. I'm hyped for Dak. And, yeah, we're going to win a Super Bowl.
Listen, we never tell Alex he's going to be on. He usually just shows up and we throw him on the show. But he's repping UCF. You're repping UCF, so that's just as important, right?
Always, always.
So the big thing to come out of this was, I think, the guarantees. The guarantees is $126 million guaranteed, but in the first year, it's looking like he's making like $66 million. How do you suspect and why do you suspect Jerry Jones did this specific deal and made it the way that it looks like?
You know what? I don't know. I was confused with the structure of it, because it's very, very front-loaded. I was not expecting that. I was expecting Dak would ask for something that's more back-loaded, get his money late, but he got his money up front, and I'm not mad at it. I do think it makes things a little bit interesting with how they're going to maneuver around this cap because the salary cap did decrease, so we'll see what they do there. But no, like I said earlier, I'm thrilled he's back. I really didn't care how he got his money. I'm just glad he got his money.
Now, the big question, I think the question on a lot of people's minds is usually when a player comes off of an injury, and a pretty significant injury, not something to mess around with, you're kind of hesitant to pay that player. You've seen it with pretty much every big-time player that's gotten injured. Do you think the Cowboys have seen something that the fans just haven't yet when it comes to Dak? Have they seen him practice after the injury? Because, again, like you said, it's a big commitment to give a guy $66 million in his first year on a new contract after a horrific injury like that.
I mean, I would assume so. I would assume they know that ankle is perfectly okay. And, you don't really have much to worry about if he is fully healthy. He's been a model of consistency. Before that injury, I don't think he missed a start. So this isn't a guy that's injury prone. This isn't a guy who has a history of, this isn't Carson Wentz. It seems like Carson Wentz gets hurt every year. Dak Prescott, before this injury, had never gotten hurt in the past. So you know what you're getting with Dak. But I would assume before committing this much money to him that they would, make sure the ankle's okay.
Now, there's a lot of questions on this Cowboys roster. Very talented, but I think consistency is the main problem for many teams that have the talent but just aren't winning. Last year, there was an excuse, right? Dak was out. You had Andy Dalton at quarterback. Garrett Gilbert started a game. This year, there's really no excuse. You have all your players returning, right? Is there one move? My big question is Ezekiel Elliott, right? I think the Cowboys should get rid of him. I don't love Ezekiel Elliott. I think he's one of the most inconsistent running backs in the league. Do you think the Cowboys should get rid of him? And would that ultimately help the Cowboys and Dak at quarterback?
So if you get rid of Zeke, who are you bringing in at running back? Are you starting Tony Pollard?
I think at the moment you start Tony Pollard, but then you have to get a running back in the draft. There's many options in the draft actually you could go get, which I think the Cowboys are going to do anyway. But there's also a couple options in free agency, like James White I think would be a good option. But what do you think? Who's a guy maybe in the draft or in free agency? Because it's just Zeke has not been consistent enough. He's got the big payday, but I think that's also going to hinder the Cowboys moving forward.
No, for sure. Zeke has definitely not been consistent, but I don't think Zeke is the problem with this team. The defense is. They need to go draft defense. Go get a corner or go get a safety. Go get a Sartain or Richie Grant. Like, go get somebody to shore up that secondary because that's where all the Cowboys' problems were. Before Dak went down, they were 1 or 2 in scoring offense. Like, the offense was fine. That game they lost to the Browns, the Browns just outscored the Cowboys. The Cowboys scored like 40-something points. Like, that, they were not the problem. It's the defense. If the defense is giving up that many points a game, you're in trouble.
Well, it'll be interesting. Quick final thoughts on Dak. What do you think now with this news? He's coming back, and it sounds like he's healthy. Where do you see the Cowboys next year?
I mean, this is definitely going to sound like a homer pick, but if they're not in the playoffs, at least the NFC Championship game, something's wrong.
Oh, God, that's so bad. They're not making to the NFC Championship. Come on, Alex.
Look at the roster. Look at the roster. Sean,
you just said the defense is the problem.
The defense is a problem, but they're going to shore it up in the draft, and I don't like Jerry Jones, but I trust Jerry Jones.
Fans, again, take it with a grain of salt. Cowboys fan over here. Let's move on to topic number 2 of the first segment. Some big news. And when I mean big news, I mean Trent Brown. He's huge. Trent Brown gets moved from the Raiders to the Patriots. And this is an interesting deal, I think, for both sides, right? When Trent Brown got this contract, it was a 4-year, $66 million deal. He was the highest paid tackle, I think, in history at the time. And the Raiders, they spent big money in that 2019 offseason. Got Tyrell Williams, got Trent Brown. And it looks like the Raiders were on the up and coming. But now, LaMarcus Joyner's gone. Trent Brown, they're getting rid of all the guys that they paid in 2019. And Trent Brown was the last piece of that puzzle. Trent Brown, obviously, a lot of Raiders fans do not like Trent Brown anymore. I think it's a known thing around the league that he didn't play a lot. He was inconsistent. He wouldn't play a lot of games, always injured. Football was not the number one priority. But now he approved a trade to the Patriots because the Patriots wanted to restructure his deal. They're like, we're not going to pay you 2 years, $29 million. We want to pay you 1 year, $11 million. And Trent Brown's like, absolutely, sign me up. So he took a pay cut to come to the Patriots and leave the Raiders. I think, obviously, New England wins this deal. It was a swap of a 5th and a 7th next year for teams. So Oakland gets a 5th-round pick, but ultimately the Patriots win out. Because if Trent Brown plays a year and then he leaves, the Patriots get a 3rd-round pick out of him leaving. So it ends up working for the Patriots. They get one of the best tackles in football if he cares about football in that particular year. And the Patriots' offensive line becomes, again, one of the best in the league like they always are. So, Alex, I want to get your initial thoughts again on this situation. Trent Brown, again, when he cares about football, he's one of the best tackles in the game, especially left tackle, right tackle, whatever. Where do you see him fitting in with the Patriots already playing there, and what does this do for the Raiders on that offensive line moving forward?
I mean, it definitely hurts the Raiders, but you're going to hate me for this, but Sean, who cares about this trade? Like, the O-line is not the Patriots' problem. You have no wide receivers. You have no quarterback. This was the least of your worries. who cares about this trade? This trade is completely irrelevant if you don't get wide receivers, if you don't get a quarterback, if you don't get a running back. Right now you have no offense. Cool, you got a good old lineman. Who cares? Who's he blocking for?
We don't know yet.
Exactly. So who
But
cares?
I don't think that is the main thought process. The main thought process is, again, the Patriots past couple years riddled with injuries on the O-line. Marcus Cannon's coming back. He's terrible. Marcus Cannon is not good anymore. So when they do get a quarterback, that's, in my opinion, the way that this looks like is it's going to be a run-first team. I don't think you make this move giving away $11 million cap to be. They could be protecting a guy like Jimmy Garoppolo possibly, but I think this move maybe symbolizes the return of Cam Newton. I don't know, but it looks like it's going to be run first because, again, Trent Brown has really learned to be a run blocker when he was with the Patriots. So maybe it's Cam Newton.
I mean, cool. So now you got Cam and Rex Burkhead. You're going to trust Rex Burkhead to get a bunch of carries a game?
Hey, Rex Burkhead was playing good last
I trust Cam Newton. Cam Newton's my dog. I hated that he went to the Patriots because I love Cam Newton. But if your starting running back is Rex Burkhead and you're going to be a run-first team, that's a problem.
Are you forgetting about Damian Harris? What?
He doesn't scare me either.
Oh, he's better than Ezekiel Elliott.
Sean,
I'm calling
you're
it
wrong.
right now.
You are wrong.
You're wrong.
There's no way Damian Harris is better than Ezekiel Elliott.
Right now?
What are you?
Who's more
yes,
consistent?
right now. I'm still taking Zeke.
Zeke is not, bro. Zeke
You
is
are
not
tripping.
Consistent.
You're
he
tripping.
Is not consistent.
You're tripping.
I don't know what to tell you.
You're tripping. Get help. Seek help right now. Seek it. Like, get off the show. This is my show now. I'm the host. We're going to have Randy on soon. This is my show now.
Oh, God.
It's the Alex Funderburke show. It's Almost Game Day with Alex Funderburke. I'm kicking Sean off. It's going to be me and Randy after this commercial break. It's before game day now.
Before game day? That makes no sense.
Uh-huh.
That's worse than some of the other names.
Before game day with Alex
previously
Funderburke. Let's
before
go.
game
What's
day.
good?
Listen, the main thought process, okay? The main thought process is, this is a good move for the Patriots regardless. Yes.
Who cares? Who cares?
Me, I care. I want to talk about it.
Well, take it with a grain of salt, like you said with the Cowboys. Hey, if you're watching this, take it with a grain of salt because this man's a Patriots fan.
No, but
this move is completely irrelevant. No one cares.
It's not irrelevant.
Who cares about an O-line move when you don't have a quarterback, you don't have a running back, and you don't have wide receivers?
Because you're going to get that.
Who cares?
You're going to get that.
N'Keal Harry's your number one right now, Sean.
No, he's not. He's definitely not the number one. Julian Edelman's number one.
Ooh, tiny white guy in the slot. So scary.
God, he's taking over this show. I'm so scared. Okay, listen, Alex, I appreciate you. I respect you. All right? We can agree to disagree.
For sure.
Dutch, I can't remember the last time the Dallas Cowboys won a Super Bowl, but I'm going to end it right there. Sorry, bye, Alex. See, it's still my show. Up next, Randy is coming on to talk about franchise tags and some free agency wide receivers that maybe the Patriots could pick up. See, Alex? All right, it's almost game day. Come on back. Here's the story of a show creator who was gearing up to form a bigger crew.
One's a California guy,
a god of graphics.
One hosted Girls on Deck.
It's a story of a 4-year nightmare, which is finally coming to an end. Thank God.
And the new kid, a Packers lover.
Tampa forever.
So then one day all these people work together to face a year unlike one that's ever been. And his group rebranded in Orlando. That's the way we all became HTFN. 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 That's the way we became HTFN. That's blasphemy! Welcome back to Almost Game Day. Take a little bit of breather. That last segment was a lot of fire, a lot of back and forth, but we're going to take a little bit of a breather and talk some franchise tag news and some free agency news. So let's get into a couple of the people that were big news in the franchise tag game. Not as many players as we initially thought. We thought there was a couple big-time players that were going to get franchise tagged by their teams. Ultimately didn't happen. But first, let's talk about Chris Godwin. He ultimately got franchise tagged by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What's interesting about this move is they're paying Chris Godwin $18 million. They couldn't lose him to free agency. Somebody was going to pay him big money to come. But when I look at this move, I was a little, I wouldn't say shocked, but Chris Godwin had a down year last year. He had a lot of drops. Clearly, Mike Evans was number one, but then Tom threw it to almost everybody but Chris Godwin, and they caught the ball. Chris Godwin had a bunch of drops last year, which I thought was a problem. I think Bruce Arians is having this notion of we can't lose a guy that was a Pro Bowler a year ago, right? Regardless of, where or who's the quarterback, whatever. Chris Godwin is a top wide receiver, and that's why they did this, because they knew they would lose him. But the question is the production there, right? That's $18 million you could have saved and repaid somebody on that defense, or basically paid a younger wide receiver that might have taken less money to come to you. So I'm a little iffy on the move. I understand it. It was going to happen because, listen, they weren't going to come to a long-term deal. I still don't think they will. That you can't just keep decreasing Tom Brady's years. I'm sorry, it's not going to work. But I still think he's a top wide receiver. I just think his production took a dip last year. So maybe I don't know if he's worth the $18 million. Let's go to another player that I saw got franchise tagged, and it was the right move. Allen Robinson of the Chicago Bears. Now, Allen Robinson is a completely different story. Allen Robinson had a great year last year. You haven't seen him have a decline in his years of playing football in the NFL. A lot of teams, he was the number one receiver on their list. Some people didn't know if he was going to get franchise tagged. Some people thought he was going to hit that open market, and a bunch of teams were gunning for him. But Chicago ultimately signs him to the franchise tag, locks him up. I don't think Allen Robinson wants to be in Chicago. I think it's very evident. He was talking about New York. He wanted to play for the Jets. That's when you know it's bad. The problem with Chicago is it's kind of like when you are a top wide receiver and you don't have a quarterback, it becomes frustrating. It's kind of like Brandon Marshall, right? When he was on the Bears and you had Jay Cutler, and obviously the Jay Cutler, it was a down time in Jay Cutler's career. Brandon Marshall was very frustrated. When you have Brandon Marshall on your team and Alshon Jeffrey, you expect there to be, that's a Super Bowl team. That's a Super Bowl offense. But it gets frustrating. So I think Allen Robinson is frustrated. But we'll see how it goes. I don't know who they're going to get at quarterback, but regardless, I don't know if he lasts very long in Chicago. I think he might play this franchise tag out, or the Bears could ultimately trade him, get something for him like a second-round pick, or even a first. But we'll see. Allen Robinson, he's one of the top wide receivers in the league, so we'll see how that goes through. A couple players, little surprised, didn't get tagged. Also not surprised. Joe Thuney. Joe Thuney, really great player for the Patriots. It was a little bit shocking. I'm not going to lie to you. But again, the Patriots, they don't have the same thought process as other teams, right? We're not going to pay this guy if we don't really want to pay him. We have to save the cap space. We have to save that money and go to somewhere else, right? That's the Trent Brown move. They knew they weren't going to pay Joe Thuney. It was the number one thing on the list, right? Joe Thuney was that important to them, especially, right? So if you pay Joe Thuney, then you can't pay another receiver. You can't pay a running back. That's where it becomes a problem. That's where the Patriots don't like to do it. Now, Joe Thuney, as you see, look at the penalties. 3 penalties in the last 2 years. For an offensive lineman, that's gold. This guy's going to get paid a lot of money, and the Patriots are glad to have him. Now, that was the main one that was just shocking. Now, going into that, I want to talk about some of the free agency wide receivers that are coming up, right? Some of these wide receivers, we talked about 2 that got franchise tagged, but one that didn't get franchise tagged is Kenny Golladay. I think when I bring Randy on, he's going to talk to you about his top free agency wide receivers. But first, I want to talk to you about my top 5 going into free agency. These are guys that didn't get franchise tagged, but are hitting the open market. So, let's start with my top 5. Number 1, I've got Kenny Golladay. Kenny Golladay, listen, anybody that tells you he's not the number 1 receiver is just lying to you. Everybody's going to be gunning for this guy. I think, again, you got a couple options here. You can probably, I would not be surprised if Jacksonville goes after him. Do I think Jacksonville's going to get him? Absolutely not. You have the Buffalo Bills. they don't have cap space, but they've released a couple guys to go get somebody like him. John Brown, officially gone. Maybe they go after him. Miami. Anybody in the AFC East is free game for Kenny Galladay. He was great with Detroit. Killed it with Detroit. So we will see where Kenny Galladay really ends up. Will Fuller, number 2. A lot of people are a little suspect about this pick. PED use is going to be suspended next year for about one or two games. A little bit of an injury-prone type of guy. I think he just needs a new place to be. I think, again, being in Houston ruins your career, realistically. So having Will Fuller step out of that box and go somewhere else, I think it's going to be great for him. Curtis Samuel probably could be number 2 or even number 1. Played great last year with Teddy Bridgewater at quarterback. And listen, he's a stud. He can run a lot of routes. He's fast. So if you want a fast, speedy guy, kind of like a Tyreek Hill, nowhere close to Tyreek Hill, but similar, Curtis Samuel's your guy. John Brown just got released by the Buffalo Bills. Listen, again, little bit up there in age, but still, he can produce. The Buffalo Bills had an embarrassment of riches at wide receiver. So that's why John Brown, you saw a dip, plus he was injured. So I like John Brown in this spot. Number 5, Corey Davis. Corey Davis has probably some of the most untapped potential I've seen in all the wide receivers this year. Again, you're behind A.J. Brown. You're not going to get the ball as much. I think, again, a new change of scenery for Corey Brown will be good. Now, a lot of you Pittsburgh fans will not see Juju Smith-Schuster on here. And that's why we'll bring Randy Vuxta on. Randy, how are you doing? Basically, right off the start, I just want to give you to give your top 5 of who you think are the top 5 free agency wide receivers. How you doing? And go ahead.
I'm doing great, Sean. Thank you for having me on the show. This is my first time being on, and it's just wonderful to be here. So diving into it, my top 5 options at wide receiver. Number 1, same as you, Kenny Galladay. I mean, dude's a stud. He was beasted in Detroit. You said Houston ruins careers, but before Houston, it was Detroit. Ruined it with Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson, and they almost did it with Kenny Galladay, but luckily he got out. At number 2, I got Curtis Samuel. He had over 1,000 receiving yards. Over 1,000 yards from scrimmage last year with Teddy Bridgewater under the helm in Carolina, and he's also 24, so that youth is going to be a big plus out there. And then at number 3, I'm going to disagree with you. I think Juju's up there. I think Juju has the production. He had a bit of a down year this past year, but he still had the most touchdowns in his career so far last year, and I think he brings a great personality to the locker room. I know he does a lot of TikTok dances. People make fun of him for it, but he definitely hypes the team up, and I feel like he'll definitely add that to a roster somewhere. At number 4, I have Will Fuller. Will Fuller kind of falls for me because, like you said, he has that injury-prone label put on him and PED usage. You know, he's going to be out first week or maybe first 2 weeks. And then finally at number 5, kind of a hot take is Nelson Agholor. I think Nelson Agholor is going to be I think he played really well with the Raiders. Even when he was with the Eagles before that, he wasn't the best. He was actually pretty bad, but he had a rejuvenation over in Las Vegas, and I think he's going to go and bring that talent somewhere else.
So, yeah, the Nelson Agholor pick is just absurd. I despise Nelson Agholor. I think he drops too many balls, and plus Tyrell Williams was out last year. A lot of people are going to give me flack for the Juju Smith-Schuster pick. My thought process on Juju, Randy, is that he is not a number 1 wide receiver. And I feel like a team's going to pay him number 1 wide receiver money. Antonio Brown left Pittsburgh, and they just, made Juju look like a number 2 or number 3 wide receiver. Why is he so high on your list?
I take the personality value into it as well. Juju brings something to a locker room that excites people. That's something that you got to look out for, especially in this one. I see this free agency a lot of short-term deals, and I feel like he's going to go and help a team out. I'm going to disagree with you. I don't think he's going to get wide receiver 1 money. I think he's going to take a really short deal, wide receiver 2. Wouldn't be surprised to see him go up to Green Bay and play with Devontae Adams for a year or 2, and then head back into free agency when the cap goes back up a little bit so he can actually get his money. So that's why Juju's up there at number 3, is because he brings something to a team. And like you said, he's not a number 1 guy. He'll never be a number 1 guy. He's been trying to do that the past 2 years, and it just hasn't produced. But he can definitely be that solid number 2 option, as you could see early on in his career.
Now, do you think that his TikTok, antics, I think a lot of people our age don't think it's a big deal, but when you're in the National Football League, when things become a distraction or start to affect the team, that's when it starts to affect you in the eyes of the, front office. So do you think that his personality will affect his ability to get big money in free agency?
I think his personality isn't one that's as toxic as some others will say. The biggest example I can think of right now is Antonio Brown. I feel like his personality is a distraction. It clearly is. I mean, he's, dancing on other teams' logos. Other teams take that and they take offense to it, and they want to beat you. So I think that it's not going to affect him that much. I also don't think he really needs to pursue that much money. I think Juju has a lot of endorsement deals outside of. I mean, you see him playing, Fortnite all the time on his streams. You see him making deals with EA Sports in their area. So I don't think the financial aspect is really a big deal for him. But he is young, so he might be chasing that bag like a lot of young stars do. But I don't think his on the field, performance antics are going to really be a bother.
Now, we both had Kenny Golladay number 1. Where do you see him going? Where is it? A couple teams that you think he'd be a good fit in and have a good opportunity to sign him?
So I think Kenny Golladay, I think number 1 option that he's probably going to go to is the Patriots. Make you a little bit happy there, Sean. I think that they have the money for him, and I think they'd be able to get him those stats that he wants, those numbers that he wants. I could also see him going to the Dolphins, helping Tua be able to have a very solid number 1 option outside of course, Mike Gesicki there. But I really do think the Patriots are going to throw like a ton of money at him and get him to come there, and maybe Cam another year with him to Golladay.
That'd be great. I wish Alex Funderburke was here to hear that, which he still is. He can hear that. Randy, I'm already liking you more on this segment than Alex with stuff like that.
Sean, I just want to say that I'm happy that this is my first time on the show. Is going to be your last time on the show, because I heard that Alex is taking over Almost Game Day. And honestly, I like the direction he's going to take the show. I think he's going to be a great host, and he has my support. I'm with Alex.
See, I love when Johnny Jackson gets into our ears and tells us what to say. It's amazing. I never get that treatment, so it's fun when my guests get it. So thank you to Johnny Jackson for that. Final couple things, Randy, before we go. You had a couple different wide receivers on your board than me. Curtis Samuel is one we both had, just like Kenny Golladay. That is one name. I have no idea where he's going to go. I don't know if he re-signs with Carolina. There's so many questions there, and with Matt Rule as the basically new head coach, he's a little bit different. So where do you see him going, and who would he be a good fit with?
Similar as you said, Curtis Samuel, he's a little speedy guy. I think he's going to replace John Brown on the Bills. I think the Bills are going to sign him to a team-friendly deal and make him their speed guy. They got rid of John Brown, which you have in your top 5, which I think is just overanalyzed. I mean, the guy's 30 years old. I think that's a bit of a reach there, Sean, but I think that they're just going to replace John Brown easy there. He could also go to the Colts. I could see the Colts as a good fit for him. They finally have a good quarterback. They're probably going to lose T.Y. Hilton, and I could definitely see this as an upgrade for him.
Randy Vuxta, I really appreciate you coming on. We'll definitely get you on very soon. Maybe next week, free agency. We'll find out where all these guys are going next week. Thank you for tuning in to Almost Game Day. Fun show, a little bit different, but hey, we're midway point through the season. Next week, big free agency special next week. We're going to bring on a bunch of guests to talk about all the moves that happen. I'm so excited to talk about it. Hey, maybe the Patriots make some moves. Again, Alex. Okay, I'm not going to live that one down. All right, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. As always, follow us on all of the social media. Subscribe down below. We'd love to have you. And tune in to all of our shows next week, every week. Just tune in. I appreciate it. This has been Almost Game Day. I'm Sean Green. Thank you for coming.